At 52, I thought I had everything. Corner office overlooking Manhattan, a seven-figure salary, admiration from clients, and respect from colleagues. I was the man everyone envied, until my wife whispered 6 words that cracked my world open. Don't react. Wait until your daughter leaves. She said it while I sat frozen on our living room couch, clutching a small leather-bound diary I had found tucked beneath the back seat of my car. My daughter's diary. My sweet Emily, who once begged me to read her bedtime stories, was now writing about a stranger who shared her last name, but not her life. I read her words. Words that sliced sharper than any betrayal. Dad hasn't looked me in the eyes in years. I think he loves his job more than he ever loved us. I wonder what it feels like to be seen. A part of me wanted to storm into her room, deny it all, defend myself. But my wife, calm, hollow-eyed, stopped me with that whisper. She knew. She'd known for years. And in that moment, as the hallway light flickered and my daughter's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs, I realized I had built a life of accolades, only to lose the only ones who ever mattered. What happened next shattered the image I had of myself. If you've ever chosen ambition over love, deadlines over bedtime stories, don't look away. This story might just be the mirror you've been avoiding. My name is Tom Whitaker, and I'm 52 years old. I've been the CEO of one of the most competitive financial firms in New York for nearly a decade. The kind of job that people write about in Forbes. Relentless, cutthroat, rewarding. The kind of job that eats you alive unless you learn how to devour it first. And I had learned. I played the game better than anyone. Every morning at 5:30 I was up. Gym by 6, espresso at 6:45, in the car by 7, conference calls by 8, strategy meetings, boardrooms, high-stake decisions, win after win. I'd return home late, sometimes after everyone had gone to bed. But when I did walk through the front door, I walked into a life most men would envy. The house was stunning. Glass and stone, perched on a hill in Westchester, overlooking a forest I rarely had time to appreciate. My wife, Sarah, was always warm, polished, composed. Our daughter, Emily, 16, had her mother's grace and my ambition, or so I like to believe. I'd walk into the dining room and see them there. 2 plates set for dinner, 1 left waiting for me, even if it had gone cold. I'd kiss Sarah on the cheek, tousle Emily's hair and say, "Let's do something this weekend, just us 3. Sarah would smile, Emily would nod, and yet, they never asked what I meant. They never followed up, and I never did either. We had a rhythm, a performance. Dinner was quiet, pleasant. Emily talked about school when prompted. Sarah would ask if I'd be traveling again that week. I'd answer vaguely, then change the subject. I believed they understood. I believed they supported me. After all, I was doing this for them. When I bought Sarah a new car, she hugged me like she used to. When I paid for Emily's summer program abroad, she texted me a heart emoji. These were tokens of love, weren't they? Proof that I was a good husband, a good father. I told myself I was building a future so secure they'd never have to worry. They'd never know the financial fear I knew growing up, in a rusted trailer in Indiana with a father who drank too much and worked too little. I had sworn to be the opposite of him. And I was. God, I was. The nights we spent together, when we did, felt curated. A movie night here, a family dinner at a 5-star restaurant, a weekend getaway to Nantucket where I was still checking emails between bike rides and lobster rolls. But I thought we were happy. We laughed, didn't we? Sarah still wore the gold necklace I gave her for our anniversary. Emily still called me Dad, not Tom. I thought that meant something. Sure, sometimes she rolled her eyes. Sure, Sarah's smiles were quieter now. But that's just how families evolve, right? Teenagers withdraw. Long marriages settle. We were normal, high-functioning, stable. That's what I told myself as I reviewed spreadsheets at midnight. That's what I repeated as I missed Emily's orchestra performance, because a client from Tokyo needed an urgent call. I'll make it up to her, I'd whisper, sipping whiskey alone in the study. She knows I love her. They both do. And when Emily left sticky notes on the fridge, "Don't forget milk," or "Practice 5:30," I'd smile, proud of her responsibility. I didn't notice when the smiley faces stopped. I didn't notice when she stopped asking if I'd be home for dinner. And when Sarah began going to bed before I even got home, I assumed it was just exhaustion, not avoidance. There were signs. I just wasn't looking. Or maybe I didn't want to. Because in my mind, everything was fine. I had given them everything. The best schools, a beautiful home, luxury, protection. How could they not be happy? I waited until Emily had left for school before returning to the diary. It was still where I'd hidden it the night before, underneath the stack of annual reports in my office drawer, a place I knew neither of them ever looked. I wasn't sure why I opened it again. Maybe it was guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe both. But what I found wasn't a one-time vent from a hormonal teenager. It was a catalog, carefully dated, chronicled, and heart-wrenchingly honest. March 12th. Won the science award today. Mom was there. She cried. I wish Dad had come. He said he had a critical call, same as last time. April 4. I bombed my math exam, didn't tell Dad. He wouldn't care anyway. May 8. Samantha's dad came to school in a ridiculous dinosaur costume for her birthday. I laughed until I cried. Not because of the costume, because I couldn't imagine my dad doing anything that stupid for me. There were pages and pages of this. Pain, isolation, sarcasm masking heartbreak. Emily didn't just feel neglected. She felt invisible. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept reading. June 22nd. Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to have a dad who notices when you're sad. Mine notices when the market dips. That's about it. July 15th. I got my period today. I told Mom. I didn't even think about telling Dad. Isn't that weird? He's here, he lives here. But he's not here. Not really. I slammed the diary shut. And then I opened it again. Because I couldn't stop. I had to know how far this went. She wrote about holidays where I was technically present but mentally elsewhere. Christmas mornings where I checked emails before opening gifts. Birthdays where I sent gifts from airport lounges. Each memory she recalled, I remembered too, but not the same way. I remembered accomplishments, efficiency, getting things done. She remembered absence. I started noticing the pattern. Dates that matched my calendar. Big pitch with Zurich team. That was the same week she wrote, Dad missed my debate finals. Again. I guess it's not a final unless he's absent. Another entry, stark in its simplicity, punched harder than the rest. September 3rd. I don't think I like him. Not just as a dad, as a person. I closed the diary slowly, hands trembling. There's a moment when a man realizes he's failed. Not at work, not in money, but in the one place he assumed he was safe. His family. And it doesn't hit like a hammer. It seeps in like cold water through a cracked foundation. Slow, relentless. All this time I thought I was building something indestructible. A fortress of security, stability, and success. But my daughter was drowning in the moat outside it. I sat alone in my office, staring at the shelves lined with awards, framed articles, recognition plaques. None of them could hold a candle to what I had just read. They felt hollow, plastic. How long had she felt this way? And why hadn't I seen it? Because I wasn't looking. That was the answer. I saw what I wanted to see. A daughter in private school, traveling abroad, healthy and dressed well. But I never saw her. Not truly. Not the tears she cried when I missed her recital. Not the way she lingered near my study door and walked away when I didn't look up. I had measured my love in credit card statements, not conversations. I stood up and walked to the living room, where Sarah was folding laundry in quiet motion. She didn't look up when I entered. I held the diary loosely in my hand. She noticed it. Her shoulders stiffened. "I didn't mean to snoop," I said softly. "I know," she replied, still folding. "But now you've read it." There was no accusation in her voice. Just exhaustion. Not physical. Emotional. The kind that accumulates when your words haven't mattered for years. I waited for her to ask questions, to defend Emily, to tell me what I should do. She didn't. She just said, "There's more." The sixth call came just as I was stepping into the conference room. "Your phone's going nuts," my assistant whispered, half amused, half concerned. I glanced at the screen. 6 missed calls, all from Sarah. 1 unread text. "Emergency. Call me now." But the Zurich partners were waiting. This deal had taken months to secure. They were already seated, one even sipping from the coffee I'd insisted on having imported from Vienna. I silenced the phone, told myself I'd call back in 20 minutes. 10 minutes into the presentation, the screen on my laptop blurred. I couldn't focus. Sarah never used the word emergency. Not unless it truly was. I cleared my throat, nodded to my VP to continue, and stepped out. The voicemail played in her voice, brittle and breaking. "Tom, it's Emily. There's been an accident. She's in surgery. She was hit, crossing the street. Just, please come." I didn't remember grabbing my coat or running down the hall. I only remember the sound of my shoes on marble as I bolted through the lobby, breath caught between panic and guilt. The hospital was 27 minutes away. I made it in 15. I sprinted through the automatic doors, hair unkempt, tie loosened, coat flapping like wings. I approached the front desk like a man possessed. "My daughter, Emily Whitaker. I'm her father. Where is she?" The nurse's face softened with recognition. "She's in surgery. Trauma team took her in 20 minutes ago." I collapsed into a chair, lungs tight, heart punching through my ribs. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. I didn't know. Then I saw Sarah. She stood by the far wall, arms folded, eyes swollen, shoulders shaking in small, controlled tremors. When she saw me, something in her gaze shuddered. I walked toward her, arms open, already forming apologies. She held up her hand. "Don't," she said. "Just don't. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I called you 6 times, Tom. 6. Her voice didn't rise. That made it worse. "I was in a meeting." You were in a meeting," she repeated, nodding, eyes distant. "Of course you were." I reached for her, but she stepped back. "She was bleeding in my arms," Sarah whispered, calling out. "And you were talking about numbers." "I didn't know." "She might not walk again," Sarah interrupted. "We don't know the extent of the spinal damage yet." I felt the blood drain from my face. The walls seemed to tilt. "I want to see her," I said. Sarah's lips pressed into a line. "Not now. Not today." "I'm her father." She looked me in the eye, steady and devastating. "Today is not your day." The words landed like a gavel. I watched through the glass as doctors moved past in scrubs as nurses whispered, as machines beeped. But I was not allowed in. I sat, I waited, and I broke. It was hours later when a nurse approached. "She's stable," she said gently. "She's waking up." Sarah went in first. I stayed outside, palms sweaty, mind spinning. Then she came back out and gave a slight nod. I entered the room, trying not to cry. Emily lay pale against the white sheets, eyes half-lidded, IVs snaking around her small frame. I approached slowly. "Hey, kiddo," I said softly, voice cracking. "Dad's here." Her eyes fluttered. She blinked, looked at me, then over my shoulder, and then she whispered, barely audible, "Is Uncle Dan here?" I froze. "Uncle Dan?" I repeated, unsure I'd heard right. "The neighbor," Sarah said quietly from behind. "He's the one who picked her up from school, took her to the science fair, sat through her violin recital. You remember? When you were in Hong Kong?" Emily turned her face away from me. I stood there, hands at my sides, suddenly a stranger in my own child's life. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just been absent. I'd been replaced. The letter of resignation sat on my desk for 3 days. I rewrote it 8 times, deleted entire paragraphs, typed, backspaced, stared into space. I wasn't sure what to say. How do you walk away from the life you've built? How do you explain to men who measure success in quarterly growth and acquisition targets that you're stepping down to learn how to be a father? In the end, I kept it simple. I resign, effective immediately. I've spent 2 decades leading this company. It's time I learn how to lead my family. My assistant cried when I told her. My board was speechless. One partner threatened to sue for breach of contract. Another said, "You'll regret this." Maybe I would, but not the way they meant. The news hit the press like wildfire. "Financial Titan steps down in sudden move," one headline read. Others speculated health issues, scandal, burnout. None guessed the truth. I was burned out from missing my daughter's life. I sold the house within weeks. The mansion, the cars, the wine collection. It all went. I moved into a modest 3-bedroom home in the same neighborhood where Sarah's sister lived. A quiet cul-de-sac where kids still rode bikes in the street and neighbors said good morning. I started walking instead of driving, cooking instead of ordering in. I canceled my corporate card, deleted half the contacts in my phone, and then I sat down and wrote 2 letters, one to Sarah, one to Emily. They weren't apologies. I'd done that already, poorly. These were invitations to start again. Not as the man I was, but as the man I was trying to become. Sarah's letter was short. "I know you don't owe me another chance. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'd like to earn it, quietly. One day at a time. No promises, just presence." Emily's was harder. "I don't expect you to call me Dad. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I'd like to sit beside you. No lectures, no explanations, just a chair next to yours, if you'll let me." I didn't ask them to respond. I left the letters on their doorstep and walked away. And then I got to work. I enrolled in a parenting class. Tuesday evenings, run by a retired teacher with too many cats and more wisdom than I deserved. I learned about active listening, emotional safety, how to repair trust without expecting quick forgiveness. I saw a therapist, twice a week. A no-nonsense ex-Marine named Doug, who asked on day 1, "Do you want to fix your family? Or do you want to feel better about yourself?" I told him the truth. I didn't know yet. He said that was a start. I started journaling, not the corporate kind. No bullet points, no action items. just messy, unfiltered thoughts, regrets, questions, silent prayers. I also joined a group of fathers, men who had lost custody, respect, or their way. We met in a church basement that smelled like old coffee and unspoken shame. We shared stories, cried, laughed, tried again. Days passed, then weeks. Sarah didn't reply. Emily didn't call. But they hadn't shut the door either. That was enough. One Friday afternoon, I saw Emily at her high school. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and didn't care. I waved anyway. She kept walking. Another time, I saw Sarah at the grocery store. She nodded. That was all. Hope is a quiet thing. It doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It shows up in nods, in silences that don't end conversations, in eyes that still flicker when they see you. One Sunday, I invited them to dinner. I cooked. My mother's old meatloaf recipe, the only thing I could make without burning. I set the table, lit candles, played the music Sarah used to hum in the kitchen. They came. Sarah brought wine. Emily brought silence. We ate. It was stiff, awkward. I tried not to dominate the conversation. I asked questions. I listened. Halfway through the meal, Emily excused herself. She didn't come back. Sarah cleared her throat. She's not ready. I nodded. Are you? She added. I'm trying to be, I said. She studied me for a long moment, then gathered the plates and said, You can keep trying. That night, I wanted to quit. I wanted to drive back to the city, check into the Four Seasons, pretend this small life wasn't mine. But I didn't. Instead, I reread Emily's diary. One entry stood out, one I'd overlooked the first time. I don't need him to explain. I don't want him to apologize again. I just wish he'd sit with me, quietly, like he used to when I had nightmares. So that's what I did. The next evening, I showed up at the park near her school. I didn't bring flowers. I didn't try to talk. I just sat on a bench near where she studied with friends. I did the same thing the next day, and the next. For a week, I was just there. No pressure, no expectations. And on the 8th day, as she passed by, she paused. She didn't say anything, but she sat down beside me for 30 seconds. Then she stood up and left. But the next day, she sat again. This time, for a minute. The wall was still there. But maybe, just maybe, there was a crack. And in that crack, hope lived. I didn't speak the first day. I just sat on the same park bench near Emily's school, hands folded, staring at nothing in particular. She passed by, glanced once, then kept walking. The second day, I was there again. Same time, same place. She didn't stop, but this time her eyes lingered. On the third day, she left something behind. It was a folded, sticky note stuck to the bench, written in her quick, slanted handwriting. Can you be here again tomorrow? My heart slammed in my chest. The next day, I arrived early. Emily didn't say much when she came. She sat down beside me, pulled her knees to her chest, and watched the breeze move through the trees. We sat for 10 minutes in silence. It was the most important conversation I'd had in years. From there, it grew slowly, painfully, beautifully. She asked me to walk her home one afternoon. We didn't talk, but I carried her backpack. Another time, she invited me to help her replant a garden Sarah had abandoned in the backyard. My hands bled from thorns. I didn't mind. We burned marshmallows. We messed up pancakes. She rolled her eyes at my music but didn't leave the room. Every moment felt like a gift I didn't deserve but refused to waste. Sarah noticed. She didn't say much, but the coldness in her eyes thawed. She stood closer when we talked. She asked about my day, She didn't flinch when I reached for a dish to dry. One Saturday, we cooked dinner together, all three of us. Emily read the recipe. Sarah stirred. I chopped. It wasn't a feast. It wasn't perfect. It was real. After dinner, we sat outside. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder for the first time in a decade. That night, I cried. Not out of guilt, out of gratitude. Weeks later, Emily's school asked me to speak at an awards assembly. She was receiving recognition for a research project. They usually invited parents to say something personal. I asked her if she was sure. "I want them to hear it," she said. "From you." So I stood on that stage, my suit slightly wrinkled, palms sweating. "I used to think success was about power," I said to the students and parents, "about control. Now I think it's about proximity, how close you are to the people who matter, and how far you're willing to go to stay close." When I looked at Emily in the crowd, she was smiling. And Sarah was holding her hand. At graduation, Sarah took my hand without prompting. No words, just pressure, connection. And then Emily surprised me with a gift. It was a new journal. But this one wasn't hidden. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine, and handed to me after dinner. "I wrote this for you," she said. "Only this time, you don't have to sneak around to read it." Inside were pages of memories, little things, garden soil, pancake batter, that day in the park. The final page read, "You used to be a stranger. Now you're the part of me I didn't know I needed. Thank you for staying, even when I didn't ask you to. Thank you for not giving up. I love you, Dad." We took a photo that night. The three of us. No forced smiles, just warmth. The kind of warmth that says, "We were broken, but we are healing. Together." The invitation came in a plain white envelope. A small family conference hosted by a local nonprofit, looking for parents to share their stories. Not their victories, but their failures, their rebuildings. The title of the event was "Love That Learns." I almost threw it away. Then I remembered that day in the park, the first day Emily asked me to return. So I said yes. The room was modest. A school gymnasium converted with folding chairs, lukewarm coffee, and microphones that squeaked when tapped. Most speakers brought notes. Some brought tears. All brought truth. When it was my turn, I stood quietly for a moment, then cleared my throat. "I used to think being a father meant protecting your family from pain," I began. "I worked hard. I made money. I bought a house I never saw in daylight. I missed dance recitals, doctor appointments, heartbreaks, and for years I thought that was okay. Because I was providing." People nodded. Some frowned. A few held hands tighter. "But my daughter didn't need a provider," I continued. "She needed a presence. Not someone to fix her problems or fund her hobbies, but someone to sit beside her while she figured them out herself. Quietly, consistently." I spoke of the diary, the hospital, the bench. "I learned," I said, "that love is not loud. It doesn't always arrive with grand gestures or eloquent speeches. Sometimes love just shows up and shuts up and stays." Afterward, people approached. A man in a wrinkled blazer whispered, "That was my story too." A woman hugged me, crying into my chest. One teenage boy wiped his eyes and muttered, "I wish my dad had heard that before he left." Someone recorded it, posted it. Within a week, the video had thousands of views. By month's end, I was invited to speak again, then again. I didn't do it for attention. I did it because it kept me accountable. Soon after, I began mentoring fathers through a local outreach program. Men who had lost their children to divorce, to distance, to death. We didn't fix each other. We just listened. Emily helped organize one of the events. Sarah came too. We weren't perfect, but we were real. We built routines that weren't showy but sacred. Sunday dinners, backyard card games, late-night tea with quiet talks. One night, as we cleaned dishes, Sarah smiled at me and said, "I like this version of you." I paused, water running over my hands. "Me too," I whispered. We were no longer the couple on the Christmas card. We were better. We were honest. One Friday evening, a young man knocked on my door. Early 20s, nervous smile, sweaty palms. "Hi, sir," he said. "I'm Dylan, Emily's friend." I invited him in, offered him a seat, and listened as he rambled about school, part-time jobs, his love for chess, things that didn't matter. Until he said this. "She told me once, if you ever become a dad, be like mine. Not perfect, but relentless. He shows up, even when he doesn't know what to say. And that's more than most." I blinked hard. "She said that?" I asked. He nodded. "She did. And I wanted to meet the man who taught her that kind of love." We shook hands before he left. My grip was steady. My heart was not. Later that night, I opened a drawer and found my old planner. The leather was cracked. The pages still smelled like ink and ambition. I flipped through it, pages filled with deals, flights, deadlines. None of it mattered now. What mattered was the 3 sticky notes still stuck to the back cover. "Don't forget milk. Practice 5:30, and the third, newly added in Emily's mature, steady handwriting. Thanks for staying." I closed the planner, then tossed it into the fire. As the leather curled and blackened, I turned to see Sarah and Emily in the kitchen, laughing over a burnt batch of cookies. I didn't take a photo. I didn't need to. The image was already printed in my bones. My legacy wouldn't be my name on a building or a fund. It would be this: a bench in a park, a diary turned into gratitude, and a daughter who learned that love doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be present.